Hey everyone, Nathan here, president of Saybrook University. Welcome to another episode of our wonderful Saybrook Insights podcast. In my former working life, working in student life at a university, I had the honor, the privilege really of working with a fabulous assistant who we'll call Annie. I'm changing the name here to protect her and her family's privacy. She was both an incredibly talented professional as well as just a top-notch human being whose smile and kindness radiated, it seemed like, for miles. She was the first person many of our students would see coming down from their room, heading off to class, or one of the last faces they would see prior to going up to their room for the evening. And no matter what kind of day they had, I always knew with Annie in the house, things got a little better. And she seemed to know all 750 plus residents that were part of the facility we were at this university. She was, to put it simply, one of a kind. And after 2 great years of working together, we were reassigned to different buildings where the help was needed most. So, as happens most of the time, we lost touch more and more as the years went on. And we did try and connect every so often, but the visits became further and fewer in between. Days became weeks, then months, and then after returning to Ohio around 2008, I learned Annie had a recurrence of ovarian cancer, which had ultimately spread and would, in only just a very short amount of time, claim Annie's life. And it really had a devastating impact on all of those who knew and loved her, including her family. Like so many women, Annie had shared with me and my wife during our periodic conversations the struggles she had with endometriosis, the swelling that she would have, the frequent painful periods, and on throughout her life. And really getting taken seriously and receiving quality care was a tremendous struggle, especially in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Annie's story is not unlike millions of women across the country who found and continue to find access to care, often frustrating at best. And due to the lack of screenings available at that time, especially for someone with a history of endometriosis or other similar health issues, early detection was not the name of the game. Now, I suspect the state of women's health care has evolved, though, as we'll find out from our guest today, Dr. Arielle Dance, there are still challenges when it comes to women's reproductive health in particular and their health in general, from access to affordability to stigmatization. How do we keep working to improve and evolve so we can ensure the future Annies of the world have a better shot at living long and robust lives? Enter in Dr. Arielle Dance, a Saybrook University alumna who, among her many accomplishments, conducted research in women's health, specifically looking at integrative techniques that support women dealing with endometriosis. Like so many of our graduates, she's been engaged in myriad amazing projects, including her work at the American Cancer Society as part of a health equity division, and her most recent publication of a children's book titled Dearest One. I really look forward to diving in to learn more about Dr. Dance's views on women's health, ways we can work to use integrative and traditional approaches to further and improve and enhance their health, health equity, and also catch up with her about her book. Arielle is truly, truly a wonderful, warm human being, scholar, and author. So let's get to it with Dr. Arielle Dance. Here we are today with the amazing, fabulous, fantastic, which superlative do we want to use today? With the amazing Dr. Arielle Dance. Thank you so much for joining us today on Saybrook Insights. Before we get started, I'd like to have all of our guests talk about your journey, your personal history relating to your academic and professional life, and in your case, how you landed at Saybrook and what brought you here.
Hello, everyone. Hello, world. I'm so excited to be back on the podcast. So, I am Saybrook alumna, class of 2017, I believe, because I realized this year has been 5 years. Facebook likes to remind you how much time has passed in your life. So, this year made 5 years since I graduated. And I found a picture of us actually at my graduation, which really blessed me. It really warmed my heart. And so, a little bit about my journey to Saybrook. So, I graduated from Spelman College in Atlanta, my undergrad. I studied women's studies with a focus in women's health. I got my master's degree in women's health, master's in women's health at Suffolk University in Boston. And I met a classmate there who introduced me to Saybrook. We were both looking for Ph.D. programs, and I had gone through the traditional route, I like to call it, of being rejected 12 times to a bunch of PhD programs that said, your work is so interesting, but we can't help you here. And one of my classmates got into Saybrook and she said, you have to reach out to Saybrook. I think your work would be perfect here. And it was. And Saybrook was number 13 and a yes. And I knew it was right because when I was on a call with Dr. Curtis, she, instead of saying no, was like, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. And I do this and I do this, and that would be perfect for this professor, and this professor would be great for that. And I said, oh, here they have multiple people who are interested in what I'm interested in, as opposed to like scrounging, right, for like just one in a faculty. And so I knew that I was in the right place. So that's how Saybrook came to be. It was the perfect journey for me. And I've stayed very active with Saybrook since I left, on the alumni council and just any engagements and festivals and conferences that we have. I try to stay engaged because Saybrook poured into me. And so I try to pour back. So yeah, it's been a blast. So that's kind of like my Saybrook journey. I don't know if you want to know like what I do, but yeah, that's me.
Oh, we're going to get into all of that. And that's awesome. I guess I didn't realize your journey, especially as you were going through the grad school vetting process, as we call it. I mean, we've all been there, but it can be pretty frustrating, especially when you're going through all those. Maybe I curious, like, you went through 12? I mean, I don't know if you're being hyperbolic. Maybe it was 12. Maybe was it really 12 programs that you kind of?
It was 12 no's, some programs more than once. So it was 2 cycles, 2 years. And there were almost yeses. Like there were I don't know if how familiar some people are when I'm talking about this, but PhD programs sometimes will like fly you in and interview you and woo you. And, I got to those points where I was flying around the country and going to these interviews. And then it was still like, that's cute, but no. Like you look great on paper, but then you get there and they're like, yeah, we really can't do anything for you here.
What was it that they found? Out of curiosity, because your stuff is so really timely and relevant, and so I not to knock these institutions, but we're glad we got you instead.
I think, and this again, like I'm even trying to remember what could I have put in a personal statement that was even so specific. I think I may have written that I wanted to study people with endometriosis and maybe movement. Maybe I was doing like interested in like dance or movement may have been what I wrote. What I ended up studying, of course, ended up being like guided imagery and other modalities as a coping mechanism, which of course I'm realizing in hindsight, like my path wouldn't have gone that way if I weren't at Saybrook. I wouldn't have learned about guided imagery in such a healing way if I weren't at Saybrook. But I don't know, I was looking in sociology, I was looking in women's studies, but I'm thinking because I was studying women's health and I was studying a gynecologic disease that like maybe there was a chance I could kind of carve myself to mold into these programs. And you just can't bend but so many ways.
Your topic, I was reading a little bit more about it before we met today, and it isn't just timely now, it's been timely for decades, and especially with women's health being often ignored or sidelined at best. I don't know. I mean, I think there are a lot of opportunities. I think some programs are so traditional they're nervous to branch out, which is I think one of the advantages of Saybrook, right? That you can actually study something that is a little outside of the traditional landscape. Well, that's cool. No, I appreciate it. So I do want to get into, so for those of you who don't know, I mean, you heard in my introduction, for those of you who listened all the way through, and I hope you did, that Dr. Dance is also a published author, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But before we do that today, Arielle, I want to talk about your work in women's health. Specifically, what got you interested in the topic, and then the integrative work you do. You have I think, a compelling story because you've been dealing with some health issues since a very young age, it sounds like.
I was diagnosed with endometriosis when I was 15. And anyone who doesn't know what endometriosis is, it is a disease that impacts the gynecologic organs for the most part. It's when tissue similar to the endometrium is found outside of the uterus. So, like a little, I don't know. If you can't see me, it's hard because little clumps of things can be found on other parts of your body. It can be extremely painful, cause irregular periods and painful bowel movements, painful sex, painful urination. I mean, it's the symptoms are ridiculous, but also infertility is a big thing, and this is a huge movement, and we're really grateful. I say we because our community has grown to be a superhuman powerhouse over the years, as opposed to when I first started talking about endometriosis at 15, it was like, what are you talking about? As opposed to now, I mean, conferences and on television. And I mean, you're more likely to see things and hear about the disease now. So super grateful for that. But it really inspired me. I thought I was going to be a gynecologist. And then I realized the answers to the questions I had were more like, how are relationships impacted when someone's diagnosed? Or what are the experiences of people who are LGBTQ versus like people who are straight? Or how can endometriosis disable people? And so my questions were more like, I don't know, humanistic or sociological. Like they were just like, they weren't science based necessarily. They were human based, and so that kind of changed my path a lot. So that's how I became a researcher, I think, on this topic.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there's a whole field of medical sociology that's so important, especially
Yeah,
to understand those
yeah.
intersections, right? So you were on the cutting edge of that as you brought this topic to light. Did you, I don't want to lead the witness, so to speak, but I mean, did you find yourself struggling to get noticed or recognized when you were that age having endometriosis, or was your path through the medical establishment pretty easygoing? I mean, in terms of folks, listening and hearing you.
Yeah, so I had a mother who was an advocate. My mom had to almost beg for me to have diagnostic surgery in the beginning. And I think that's why I was lucky because within endometriosis, the diagnosis delay, I think right now is almost 20 years still, like statistically.
You're kidding.
Yeah, so because people aren't having surgery right away, and medical gaslighting is still a thing, and not just for people with endometriosis, but a lot still for women in general. And so I was lucky that my mom she brought in Our Bodies Ourselves, and I don't know how familiar people are with this book, but it's this big book full of women's health topics. And my mom was like, "No, I think she has this," and she would point to it, and she got the doctor to have to perform the surgery to explore, and the doctor goes, "Your mom was right." And thank God for my mom. So I was lucky to be diagnosed so young.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And when they figured it out, what was the course of treatment for you? How did that all kind of evolve over time? To what you're willing to share, I want to also be respectful.
Sorry. Anyone who Googles me, this is public information. I've talked about this very openly. I write about it often. This is not a secret. So you can ask me anything at this point. Um, so I've had 5 surgeries and countless medications. That's pretty much the treatment. But the main treatment, so surgery is a diagnosis and a treatment to remove the endometriosis. Pain management's a big treatment, hormonal treatment. So, birth control is common. For me personally, birth control was a treatment that I can no longer take because I ended up getting blood clots. So, if you ever hear a warning label for birth control, it says you can get a blood clot. I did get a blood clot more than once. And so I can no longer.
You were one of the teeny percentages that get, oh
I was.
man.
I was, and so, no more birth control, and blood clots are extremely dangerous and can kill you if you wait too long to get diagnosed, and so, luckily, I lived, and no more birth control. So, pain management but then there's alternative treatments, and that's why we're in this field as well. That's why I created my guided imagery script during my dissertation because we needed more treatments that weren't just surgical, that weren't just medical, but also I did some research on acupuncture, which I thought was a really great alternative, and there's some really amazing work out there. I go and love my chiropractor who's doing some really beautiful women's health work. But just knowing that there's more fields are taking this on. Pelvic floor physical therapy is a beautiful field and they do some beautiful manipulation. And so just knowing that like the treatment options, again, were not there in the early 2000s and the 90s, but really have expanded now in 20 by 2022.
Let's get into that a little bit. So, with your research that you did, maybe talk a bit about, what were the components of the research, and you mentioned some of the therapeutic interventions, that were or that come from the integrative space. Maybe lean into that a little bit more. I'd love to hear more about it.
So my dissertation was on guided imagery as a coping mechanism for endometriosis, and I created this script, and I will say like pieced together a guided imagery script that was specifically tailored to endometriosis. And where it came from, honestly, is like a mixture of hypnobirthing, if you're not familiar, like hypnosis for childbirth, knowing that people who were giving birth and listened to this specific hypnobirthing script were having less bleeding. And instead of like screaming during childbirth, they're just like, hmm, hmm, hmm. Hmm, baby. Like, that was it was just I mean, it's just that that calming, and I highly encourage anyone to Google what hypnobirthing is, and I'm not saying all births are that mild, but that's really the intended, beauty of the experience is just to put you in such a trance that your experience is that, like, just so calming. And so that's kind of how it came to be. So I did while I was at Saybrook, I did research on hypnobirthing. I went to the ASH conference, won an award for my poster on hypnobirthing, and I was like, "Well, if it works for birth, I wonder what kind of script I could do. Like, what could we do for pain management during a surgery or even just on a really painful night, right?" And so I pulled in some hypnobirthing, and then there were some scripts for some bladder conditions. And so the guided imagery for the bladder conditions would just say, healing light coats your bladder with, I don't even remember the exact language it said for the bladder one, but I was like, okay, but what if that healing light is coating your uterus? I'm like, these are like simple, changes. And so when the participants listened to the script, the final script, they're just they're like, "I slept through the night for the first time." They hadn't been sleeping because pain, we call it painsomnia, pain was keeping them up. But to finally sleep through the night, I'm like, if that's all that this script accomplished, that someone was able to sleep and rest, I feel like I was like, "Check. That's good. That's good." And we don't know I mean, I'll never be able to say, like, their pain was less, but sleeping and finding rest when you live in this body makes a world of difference.
You would think that there would be a lot more clinical trials out there looking at these types of interventions. I don't know if they exist or not, but I can totally relate to that. When I do, my meditation, my daily meditation, or try to do it every day. I do fail on occasion.
You're
So,
not alone.
yeah, I'm not an A+ student in that category. But the one thing I found is like if I'm really torn up, like if I had a bad workout or if I'm really stressed out, it kind of it's the analog. I mean, I'm it's kind of maybe not a great analog, but I'm able to really kind of soften those areas, relax those areas where I'm feeling the most pain or pressure. And it seems very obvious to me that if that's doable there, it should be doable down there in the nether regions, right? Where we're
Definitely, and I think it makes a difference, and I wish and yeah, I'm thinking, I'm multi-thinking because now my brain's just sorry, for people who can't see me, I'm very active with my hands. I'm a dancer, so my body's just, like, moving, but, I just I'm taking myself back to when I experienced the script because I feel like if you're a researcher, especially in our field of mind body medicine specifically, I had to experience it for myself, right? So on my painful days, on days when I was experiencing endometriosis symptoms, I listened to the script because I want to know if it works or if it even impacts me. And so for me, even for me, I was like, oh, it felt so good just to imagine what a gold warm light feels like. And the talk and within the language talking about like what blood flow means and where you need healing blood flow, but also where you may not want a lot of blood flow because endometriosis can cause like very heavy periods. And maybe we want to like lessen the blood flow. And there's literature about this in hypnosis, in the hypnosis world, about like people who go to the dentist and they listen to hypnosis. And if they listen to the hypnosis, there's less bleeding at the dentist because that's one of the goals. And so that's what some of that language is within this guided imagery script as well.
And for the laypersons out there, what maybe kind of give an over. By the way, for those of you listening, Arielle mentioned ASH, which is the
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, don't let me get it wrong. American Society for Clinical Hypnosis.
bam A+ right there.
Yay! It's been some years. It's been some years.
Major society. And for those of you that think hypnosis is the purview of like you're getting sleepy, it's way different than that.
Oh, I learned so much just as a student sitting there, and shout out to Dr. Wilmarth who was like, "Yeah, come on and learn." I mean, I sat there as a student just soaking it all up.
That's so cool. Yeah. And for the uninitiated or the lay people out there, what is guided imagery just in a nutshell?
I like to so people ask me all the time because they're like, "What's your dissertation about?" I like to say it's meditation with in your mind with pictures. That's how I like to say it.
That's a great way to put it.
And I always say, like, I always use light within mine or bubbles. So I say sometimes I'll just say, like, picture a light of your favorite color moving through your body, making you feel good.
That's perfect. It's like you do this for a living almost.
You wanna know what's funny, Dr. Long? I'm gonna give a confession here on the podcast. I feel like I'm so out of our world. I'm no longer in this beautiful world of integrative health, of mind body medicine. I feel like I've after I graduated, I had to like try and stay here, but I feel like I pulled myself out. I work in nonprofit full time, which I didn't share. I work in nonprofit and I write about disabilities full time. Like that's what I do, and I'm not here.
I want to get into that because that is a new development that I want to talk about.
It is.
So real quick, I mean, I know you can't do this real quick. Nothing like this topic I'm about to introduce, but then we want to talk about your nonprofit work. When we look at the medical establishment right now, what does it get right when it comes to women? What does it get wrong? How about with marginalized groups? Where is this? Where are we at with all of this? Because you mentioned the 20-year diagnosis gap, even with endometriosis alone.
I don't know if I can answer this question easily.
Fair enough.
So I work in health equity. This is a good bridge. So my work is in health equity at the American Cancer Society, and I think what we're seeing, and even since the pandemic, I mean, delay in diagnosis is something, but delay in screening, and it's not us, American Cancer Society. I'm talking about me, Arielle, what I read, what I see, right? You see people who are afraid to go to the doctor. You see still medical mistrust, which has been, I mean, tale as old as time. Medical mistrust is a tale as old as time, right? People still afraid to go to the doctor. People are afraid to get bad news. And then how are we helping to combat that? How are we having conversations with people? You see lack of accessibility, and I'm saying accessibility on a disability stands on a literacy stands. We're not meeting people where they are. We're not having conversations with people or changing our buildings or changing our literature to make things more readable and accessible for humans. And I mean, there's just so many things. Health equity in itself is just a whole umbrella. And I feel like as our world is trying to shift upward, we're leaving so many people behind. And we're just saying they got to catch up if they want to stay healthy, or just telling them all the things they're doing wrong without trying to help them get better. If that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. That's a perfect shift. I think the short answer is we could be doing a lot better on the medical establishment side, and that's probably everyone from the docs in the hospitals to the communities and helping serve our communities differently. So let's lean into that a bit with health equity. What exactly are you doing now in your nonprofit to help kind of combat some of those issues that you brought up?
So my team, or the American Cancer Society in general, in our health equity work specifically are focusing on a lot of get screening, people returning to screening. So because of COVID, and this is kind of why I alluded to this, because of COVID, you have to think about how many people stopped going to the doctor or missed appointments or missed screenings, missed their annual screening. So it's like, okay, got to make that appointment. When was the last time you went to the eye doctor? Ooh, did you miss that colonoscopy? And you got to like schedule all those appointments again. And so people are just now getting back into that routine. And so that's part of it, like getting back into screenings and getting comfortable going back to the doctor. So that's part of the work that we're doing. Part of the work I'm doing with ACS, and in part of the work that I'm doing outside. So I also write for another organization called Diversibility. I do a lot of disability advocacy work. And so I'm trying to pull that into ACS right now as well, just about, I think when we talk about equity in general, we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, people think about race automatically. Then we start thinking about like LGBTQ, but we're leaving out more people. And so disability status has been neglected. And I've been writing a lot about like barriers to healthcare for people with disabilities, even accessibility at events. So because I'm in a nonprofit, how are we making our events more accessible to people with disabilities? Even virtual events, are we, providing closed captioning? Are we, do we have transcription? Do we have ASL interpreters? But do you have ramps? Do you have large porta johns for people? And so I'm literally breaking down everything that we are or are not doing and really hoping that, it's promoting some change within the nonprofit world, but just within our society in general.
That's heavy work. That's a lot of hard work, right?
It's so fun though. It's so fun because I get to talk to so many people and learn about their experiences. And that's how I'm doing it, because I talked to someone and they're like, "Well, I went to your event and I didn't find this," or "I got on that call but I couldn't see or hear what was going on."
So it gives you an opportunity to innovate in the space and make it better for everybody, or keep making it better. So in terms of like where ACS is at with this, I mean, are you all seeing incremental change? How are people responding? I also ask this out of a personal kind of approach because I know for a fact that someone in this group has not been to the dentist in a while.
No judgment at all.
I need to be judged on that. I think but the reality is, right, like COVID and kind of some of the issues there, and now coming out of it, and I can only imagine, like, if I'm feeling that, and someone who has direct access to great dentistry, I can imagine that would be very, I won't say terrifying because I hate to stigmatize dentistry, but I think it is kind of a terrifying thing for a lot of folks. But beyond that, like the screenings you mentioned, are you seeing incremental gains here? Are you see what's kind of the work going on, that the results, I guess, really around that front?
So again, I will keep plugging that I'm speaking as Arielle and not as the American Cancer Society, but as a employee who sees change, right? So we are like actively pushing these campaigns to get people back to the doctor and back for screenings and back for general healthcare appointments. But you're not alone. I do want you to know, like, you're not alone. It took me some time to get back to the doctor out of pure COVID fear. Like, and that was part of it. Like, are we addressing the reasons people aren't going to the doctor? Like, I was just terrified to leave my house. And so how do you address that? Are we having telehealth appointments? Are we helping people do some type of self exams at home, and all those steps? Part of what we're doing is funding smaller, like in areas that are underserved, funding smaller health centers to help them have outreach programs to get people to get back to their health centers to get their screenings. And so it looks different in every community, but for people who are, I will say, who have access to care and are just not making time for it, it's going to take the bring a friend, the call a friend, the remind a friend, or sometimes, we got to do it, schedule it. Like, it's going to tell me, like, right now, put it on your things to do list to call your dentist tomorrow and schedule that appointment, and just like holding each other accountable.
That's good. Accountability partnerships.
Oh yeah.
I love those. Yeah, yeah. It's a big game changer on that front. Well, I appreciate the insights from that angle, and then I mean, you have to understand, Arielle, that you haven't left the field. You're very much like I'm thinking health equity is like right in the zone of integrative medicine and health sciences, and I think it's kind of instrumental for and important for folks when a lot of us, like I did my doctorate in something, I'm not doing what I went to school for per se, right? But I am doing definitely adjunct or kind of adjunctive related work. And you're kind of in it, which I think is awesome.
That's helpful. That makes me feel a little better because sometimes I'm like, am I doing what I'm paid to do? Like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing, whatever that means? And so that's helpful.
Yeah, well, I can assure you, you're right in the zone on that front because we need more people out there advancing some of the work. I always talk about advancing the health and well-being of the communities we serve, and you're right in that space, definitely. So we're gonna pivot again because you're also a children's book author, which is so really super cool. And I know you've got some plans. Your first published book came out just a while back. What was the inspiration behind the book? Can you give us an overview of what it's about? What all is in it a little bit? Tease it because we want people to buy it.
This is funny. So, if I may, I sat on this podcast with you maybe a year or two ago. I'm going to say 2 years ago, and talked about being a writer and the fact that like I have all these children's book ideas and I just needed a yes. I just needed something to come to be. And, what was going to happen and I don't know what's going to happen and just praying for something. And within a few months, I got a yes from a publisher. And so during COVID, I was writing a lot. And by February of 2021, I got a yes. And so I'm going to show you the book, but no one else can see it. But it's behind me. But the book is Dearest One. It exists. Lantana Publishing is my publisher. They're based in the UK. It is full of 12 affirmations, and this is why it's so aligned with like the mindfulness component of it all. So maybe you're right. I stay in the field. It's a great meditation, honestly. 12 affirmations or words of wisdom. It's written in the form of a letter from a grandparent to a little one, or written in the form of a letter to us as grown-ups, because I think grown-ups really appreciate it. So there are 12 of them, but I'll read the list to you. I could read them to you, but the affirmations are like dare to smile, embrace the rain, find music in the quiet, turn your face to the sun, which is my favorite because it says turn your face to the sun and stand tall as a sunflower. And I always love that because sunflowers are my favorite. It talks about self love. So show your self love, take up space, which is like something I think we all have to remember that like we can take up space and not to kind of go into ourselves but remembering that like, we deserve to be here, being brave even when you're scared, being gentle with yourself, choosing your path, your own path, shining your light, remembering who you are. And that's when it comes into talking about your ancestry and passing on the stories of your ancestors. And that's because the book was coming from a grandmother's perspective. And then knowing true love, knowing pure true love. And so, yeah, that's the book. And so I really do love this book. Even if only one copy had sold, I would have been okay because to me, please don't only sell one copy. I've clearly sold more than one copy. But for me, it was just sharing the message of what I hoped my grandmother would have said to me. She passed before I was born, and I had no idea what she would say. So I wrote this wondering what she would say to me. So, Dearest One, it's available on Amazon, bookshop.org, barnesandnoble.com. I don't know. It's like pretty much if you Google Dearest One and Arielle Dance, you'll find it.
Would love for you to read an excerpt if you don't mind. And by the way, people can see us on YouTube.
Oh, they can, you can see. Oh, then in that case,
Yeah, give it a good look, everyone.
okay. Do you have a favorite one that you want me to share?
Either the take. How about taking up space?
Stand by. It's a good page too. All right. So, this is the page. Okay, I'm going to turn so I can read. It says, take up space. Remember to find your magic, even when someone tries to dim your flame. You are a unicorn, a mermaid, a fairy, a dragon. You have the power within you to be whoever you are meant to be. And that's why it's my favorite. And that's what I mean, though, when I say it's like it can be for grown-ups, because I think sometimes we also need those reminders to take up space and remember that we can be whoever or whatever.
Well, I've got my copy. Everyone should get theirs. And so if it, we can find it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and bookshop.com or org, one of those two.
I found it on Target.com. I found it. That's why I said if you Google, you definitely find it.
I can't even get my name in the library anymore. So, you know, you're big time. I mean, Target?
There are some libraries too. I don't know if I'm big time, but while it's still in the library too, I love that. I love seeing pictures of people reading it in the library. That really blesses me because, supporting libraries and I think that's really important right now as well.
Absolutely. Well, so go get your copy today. And then do you have any plans for future books that you're writing or in process right now?
Yes, I have more children's books on my computer and I'm just waiting to see which one I feel like would be a good number two to this. But I also have the adult version of the book. So, me writing back to my grandmother. So, currently, I'm the age she was when she passed. And so, I'm writing to her during this time. So, it's been a year or two of just writing her letters or questions, what she thinks about this, or did she like to do that? Because I don't know. I don't know if she liked chocolate. I don't know if she liked to swim. Did she like to ride a bike? Did she know how to ride a bike? All these things, just all these questions that probably never get the answer to. But I'm having so much fun writing questions and then blurbs about them. So these flash essays to her have been fun.
And probably very moving and cathartic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think it's a little more entertaining, like, joyful than I anticipated. I think some of them, have brought up feelings of grief, and I write about grief a lot, and so sometimes, you're writing to someone who's no longer here and grief and loss naturally, you're writing about grief and loss naturally, but, sometimes I'm writing and I'm like, "This is playful," and I'm wondering what your life was like back in the 50s, what was it like for you? So
Very cool. Appreciate that so much. All right. So we've got two final questions for you. These are quick takes. Yeah. Yeah. So whatever comes to mind, you will only kind of be graded with an ooh or an ah. So the first question is, what does the term humanistic mean to you?
human first, like people first, seeing what people need to feel whole and then like guiding them to look inside themselves.
Ooh and an ah. That was fabulous.
You said it was quick, so I'm just doing it.
All right. And then the last question. So this is putting you on the spot to come up with three things. All right. So I'm priming the brain pump here for you. All right. With all that's out there regarding the myriad challenges we have in the world, right? Whether it's health or economics or mental health, whatever you name it, we've got a lot of them. What are three things people can do right now based on Arielle Dance's approach to life? So, what are three things they can do right now to improve their own health, their well being?
I like this. First, share your story unapologetically. Share your story. Just share it. And like 1B would be share the stories of others. So, like your ancestors or a mentor who's no longer here, share the stories because that's how people live on, right? Okay, so that's one. Two, because we talked about it, go to the doctor or schedule that appointment that you forgot, whether it's a doctor's appointment or you've been looking for a therapist, whatever it is, schedule the appointment. Don't put it off. Do it now. Schedule the appointment. Three, do something different. Take the class, write the book, sing the song, do the dance, do something different, something you've never done. Just try it. Have an adventure. I took a tap class. I'm taking a tap class. Went last night. I'm a dancer. Yes. Tap. No. I was so off balance last night. I was like, this is fabulous. Had a blast. Take the class. Do the thing.
Now you're inspiring me to do like tap dance, and I would be a mess.
Please.
All right.
No, just do it. It was a room full of adults. It was an adult class, and we were all just giggling and grateful to be out the house for the night. I mean, it was great.
All right. What a fabulous series, and they're diverse in what you've provided. So share that story, both yours and others. get to the doctor, get that appointment, and also go to the appointment, right? And don't put it off, and then do something different. Take that class, write the book, do the dance. So I've got my marching orders. I'm going to go to the dentist for sure in another month, and I'm going to go tap dance or something. So, but it'll be fun. Dr. Arielle Dance, what a pleasure to have you on here. You just got such a great energy, great mind. We're lucky to have you in our orbit at Saybrook University. Thanks for being here today.
Grateful for it. Grateful to be here always.
All right, that was just phenomenal. I feel like we're batting 1,000 with all of our guests, and Arielle just hit it out of the park with her interview today. I hope you enjoyed Dr. Dance as much as I did. Remember her 3 major takeaways. Share your story unapologetically, and also share the stories of others, those like your ancestors, your various family members who are willing to have those shared. Go to the doctor and get that appointment. Make sure to go to that appointment. Don't put it off. Listen, I'm going to commit today to getting that dental appointment scheduled, getting my eye appointment scheduled. If I can do it, you can do it. We'll stand together in solidarity. And then lastly, do something different. Take a class, write a book, do the dance, whether it's tap or something else, or play an instrument. Find something that can release your creative energies. If you want to see the video elements that we've created, please visit our Saybrook YouTube page. These are pretty phenomenal. Our producer, Phil, does such a fabulous job with these, and he is truly amazing in what he can patch together and do for us. So please take a look at those. If you'd like to support the podcast, I'd ask that you go to Apple iTunes, leave that 5-star rating and review, and subscribe so you can get episodes as they come out. If you're on Spotify, leave that 5-star rating and make sure to follow us there. You can, of course, subscribe to us on most major podcast platforms, including Google, Stitcher, Pandora, and others. Remember to check out our show notes for information on Dr. Dance, including the links to her books. You can remember to find those on Amazon, bookshop.com, Barnes & Noble, etc. We'll make sure those are in the show notes as well. For more about our mind-body medicine program or the university, go to www.saybrook.edu, click on Areas of Study at the top of the page, and locate the program to learn more. Or simply Google Saybrook University Mind-Body Medicine Program. That's it for now. Get that appointment scheduled. Take care. Be well.